Okay, hello. This is Latrina, the fastest hand in Sanctuary. This is my barbarian, and he's my first character I've made in Diablo 4. And I'm going to show you how the build works and talk a little bit about it. I know there are some frenzy enthusiasts among the Diablo fans. It may not be the most efficient build, it may not be the most sought out build and the most powerful build, but if you like attacking fast, and I know I do, and I know there are some other people like me out there, then this build, in theory, should be for you. Uh, this is by no means a pro build or approach or look at the build from a perspective of professional gamer. I'm definitely a casual and an older gamer, so I prefer comfort and the less buttons I have to press, the better. So yeah. Quick warning though, it seems that not all of the things which should be working or are working as intended, or maybe they are not explained very well, and you think some of the statistics, some of the bonuses might be working and should be working, but unfortunately they are not. So I'll also try to talk about this a little bit more in the future. So yeah, like why Barbarian? Mostly because I really like playing Barbarian in open beta. It was just the right amount of challenge and fun, and it can be right next to the enemies, and you can chop them up. Unfortunately, I didn't really like other builds. I tried Rend, and Rend seems like a very safe and strong option, like the Blade build, but it didn't seem very much like a Barbarian build to me. It was more of a hit and run guerrilla warfare style, and I just wanted to get in there and chop them up, like I used to do in previous games. So maybe that's a short introduction. Yeah, not sure how many of you played Diablo 2, but my fascination with fast attacking characters that with the Zealot Paladin, especially in classic Diablo before like Lord of Destruction, when there was I don't know, there was no cap or there was a much higher cap in the amounts of attacks you could do with the Zealot. I think that's the ability's name. So I finished the campaign without much problem. I killed world bosses, and I'm doing nightmare dungeons in World Tier 4. And I also started playing World Tier 4 at around, I believe I finished Capstone Dungeon at 64. And I even killed the Butcher in Nightmare Dungeon who was level 66 at level 60 when I was 65. So the build is quite. You can definitely play it, and I'm not a pro gamer, so if you're much younger than me and you have faster reflexes, etc., then you probably will do much better than me. I'm just a lazy gamer. So as for the abilities which I use, it's definitely Frenzy, and I've chosen to use Double Swing mostly due to the way because there are some items, some bonuses which you can roll, which are for one-handed weapons and some Paragon options. So I chose those two. The upheaval seemed cool, but I really like dual wield, so I've gone with this route, and you can do some nice bursts with it, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in the later parts of this video. Mm, the weak side is the downside is that the AOE is pretty small, so that's something you have to keep in mind. We are also using Ground Stomp as our crowd control and opening for our burst window. We also use Death Blow And we use it mostly just to help us keep berserking up, so it's our buffing ability. We have one defense in cooldown in form of challenging shout. It just basically prevents you from dying and lets you stand in all sorts of nasty effects on the ground. You don't have to move, and if you're a lazy old gamer like me, then that's something you definitely want. And lastly, we have Call of the Ancients. This is up to discussion. You can definitely switch it up. There are better options out there, but this is sort of an oh shit button, and I wasn't really a fan of it when I read it. I wasn't a fan of the Ancients in previous games. But for some reason, when shit hits the fan and there are a lot of enemies and you are fighting an elite and suddenly two more elites pop out of the ground, or you pull something and they're fighting four elites, or whatever is happening on the screen, if you pop this cooldown, it becomes manageable. It saved my life countless times. I know there are better options out there. I know there are better options out there which are suited specifically for this build. But I like having Call of the Ancients on my skill bar because it helped me out a lot during the campaign and during Nightmare Dungeons, and it also buffs you a bit when you invest points into it. So it increases your damage. So in addition to that, they crowd control enemies. They generate fury for you, so you can just go to town with your fury spenders, and there are passive nodes in your skill tree that I believe they increase your attack speed, which is very nice for us because we are playing a barbarian. And also, yeah, and I believe they increase your damage. Okay, so maybe now next section, let's look at the skill tree. And I'll try to go quickly over it. Our main ability is Frenzy, which increases our attack speed and also reduces the damage we take for each stack of Frenzy we have, which is very nice. I also opted, well, I didn't opt for it. I had to go through here. It's also giving us additional Fury and also damage reduction. Yeah. So I should have started with this. So I know that a lot of people are having problems with Fury generations on the Barbarians, and they're using triple shouts. But with this build, you're really generating a lot of Fury, so it's not a problem for you. Next, we go to the double swing, and of course, we go with the when your double swing hits a stunned or knocked down enemy, you generate 25 Fury. And also it makes them vulnerable if both swings attack the same enemy. So that's also very nice. That's why the double swing can hit quite hard and very, very fast. Next we go with ground stomp, and that's mostly due to the synergy with double swing. We also increase the duration, which is nice, 4 seconds, really nice. And also the fact that we can generate 21.5 Fury when we use it is pretty cool, because even if we do not have Fury, we can just use double. We can use Ground Stomp and then get 25 Fury, and then just start spamming double swings. And we can just keep spamming it because we will be getting Fury back from the enhanced double swing. So even with no Fury, you can start. You just throw Ground Stomp and you just start spamming double swing, and you're a happy little barbarian. I'm going with the challenging shout because, yeah, some additional damage reduction is nice. I've chosen to go with the max life and the thorns. I don't really think it's crucial. It is nice, especially during leveling, because you don't have to. During the leveling process, enemies don't have such high amounts of life. So Very often, if you're fighting enemies, you can focus on melee enemies, enemies who are fighting in melee with you. And if you pop up the challenging shout, the ranged enemies will very often kill themselves off your thorns, even if you do not invest in any thorns in your equipment. So that's pretty nice. But you can definitely take that point out of here. I've also chosen Outburst and the Toughest Nails, and this has, in theory, no synergy with the build whatsoever. However, there are some legendary effects and Paragon Board options which activate when the enemy is bleeding. There is also, for example, uniques which decrease damage you take when there are enemies who are bleeding around you, or they increase your damage. There are a lot of things which you can do with bleed to buff your character. That's why I've chosen to go with Tough as Nails, because when the enemy will hit you, they will bleed because of this effect. You can also substitute this if you do not like this and you want to save those 2 points. There's a legendary. I don't think I have it. Yeah, I replaced this effect, but there's a legendary effect that whenever you hit somebody and you're berserking, and when you're berserking, when you hit them, it also applies a bleed to them. So that is something which you can also save points. So you can save those 3 points if you do not want to put them. And probably would be nice to put them in movement speed, because movement speed is pretty nice, especially when you're running so much in the nightmare dungeons. Then we move to the next section. I do not have any brawling skills. You can maybe substitute one of them for Call of the Ancients. I've taken the damage reduction while I'm berserking, because we're berserking a lot. And the shout duration and damage reduction when you have a shout active. So yeah, that's that. Here, very nice, is increased damage to close enemies and damage reduction from distant enemies. The higher the level of the Nightmare Dungeon, I noticed damage reduction from distant enemies is becoming more and more important, so this is nice. And I've gone with Death Blow, mostly due to the fact that it generates Berserking, it gives you Berserking, so which is very nice. Damage buffing effect. Here we're going with Call of the Ancients and getting the increased attack speed and damage, and the some crowd control and fury generation. And here also increase attack speed with 100 weapons, because we want to attack as fast as possible. Lastly, as a key passive, we are going with Unconstrained, which increases our berserking duration from Death Blow to, I believe, 8 seconds, and also increases the damage. The other options we're not really. The other options are not that appealing. The Walking Arsenal, we're not switching those weapons that much. We are switching between dual wield and two-handed weapon for Death Blow, but that's not really core part of the build. You can use Unbridled Rage to burn through your fury faster and increase the damage of double swing, but it will also increase the fury, and then you will not be able to just do the ground stomp and double swing combo. At least that's what I think. I did not test it, but if the double swing will cost like 50 fury, then yeah, you'll run out of fury. And there are some damage windows when this is just sweet when you combine these two. When a boss is in the crowd controlled state with when his health bar turns blue, and you just go to town. You pop off your ancients, you pop off your death blow to get berserking, and then you go ground stomp and this, and you don't even have to go ground stomp. Sorry, because the double swing will, the boss will already be crowd controlled, so you can just keep double swinging. And the last one is for bleed, so not a big fan. The other thing, I also told you that you can swap the Call of the Ancients, and probably the most logical thing to do would be to swap it for Wrath of the Berserker, because it gives you Unstoppable, and I'm severely lacking a source of Unstoppable in the Nightmare dungeons, especially when I'm running like the affix when the elites have freeze effects always. It's literally unplayable. There are moments when I'm like crowd control for 10 seconds. So I have just time to pop off my potion, and then I'm crowd control and frozen again. And sometimes I'm just wasting like 4 or 5 potions, wasting my challenging shout, and I'm frozen all the time. So having a source of unstoppable in here would be nice. I probably should add another option in my legendary powers. That is something which I need to add to the build definitely, because it's becoming very, very difficult to play in certain situations. Which is making me kind of annoyed, because this is a very easy build to play and a very straightforward build to play, and yeah, so that is disturbing my mojo while I play it, and I don't like that. You could go with the increased movement speed, fury generation, which we don't really need that much, because in combat I don't think I lack any movement speed in combat, and the fury generation in general is not a problem in this build. You could go with this option if you would decide to go with the Unbridled Rage. But if you're going with the Ravel Berserker, it's also nice to go with the Unconstrained, because it will buff your Berserker bonus by 25%. And lastly, every 50 Fury you spent increases your damage bonus by 25%. There are ways to severely and heavily increase the duration of your Berserker buff, so this could stab quite nicely, and you're building fury fast and you're spending fury really fast, because your attack speed is quite fast. So you could build this up. Sorry, I had to take a sip of coffee. You could build this up, this buff up really, really fast. Is this the most efficient build? No. Is this the best build? No. Is it a good build? Probably not. But you can finish the game and have a lot of fun, and have your barbarian attack really fast, and that is nice. Points which you can move somewhere else are definitely Outburst, Tough as Nails, and I believe there was one more, which I said you could move somewhere else. Don't remember. Yeah, sorry, don't remember. But one of them you can definitely think about it. Okay, and in the end, let me mention 2 more notes, which I forgot to talk about. The first one is Imposing Presence, which is nice percentage addition to your life, although I'm pretty sure it does not include bonuses from items, but I may be wrong. And the second one is Martial Vigor, which gives you damage reduction against elite enemies, so all of those elite packs, bosses, etc. So the most dangerous enemies. So I believe that's also pretty useful. So that's why I decided to also take those 2 notes. Okay, so maybe I'll talk a little bit about equipment. And this will be just my general, how should I say, just my point of view on the equipment and what I'm trying to focus on. Because as I said, I'm only level 74. I'm not high level. This is not an end game gear. I'm going to replace most of it. There are a lot of pieces which I still have from world tier 3. So I'm going to go quickly through the equipment and maybe give you my general approach to it. So it's very important to keep in mind how the damage calculation works, and I'm no expert on it. However, from what I managed to find out online, from reading, from my very own experience, most important stat, which you can have in order to increase your damage are critical strike and damage and vulnerability. Because they multiply, they are true multipliers to your damage, which made me quite sad. I'm not gonna lie. I was when I for the first time when I've seen the affixes which can roll on items, I was very happy because an example here on this weapon you can see damage to close enemies, or there's also when was it? Where is it? Increased damage to bleeding enemies in here. So this is also very nice when you have a source of bleed, which you have, due to our thorns. There's also increased physical damage, increased damage to stun enemies, and it all looked really nice. However, from what I read online, there are certain brackets where the damage type is put during the calculation, which makes certain damage modifiers much more valuable than others. But I'm not going to go in depth into it. There are other much better sources of it. There are plenty of very good YouTube videos around this subject which you can find on the platform. So I'm not going to pretend this is my own. I just learned it from others. So that's what I've been trying to replicate. So on weapons, I'm definitely trying to look for vulnerable damage, for basic skill damage, and for critical strike damage. Those are the three main stats which I'm trying to find. And yeah, so, when you've seen my weapon, you can see that I don't have them. Like on most of them, I still keep this one weapon with very good rolls in theory, because I wasn't able to find anything with better stats. We are stacking basic skill damage because we want to make our frenzy useful. So we are trying to find basic skill damage whenever it's possible, and we're also using, I believe these are topazes in our weapons, which increase our basic skill damage. Is it optimal? No, it is not optimal. I don't think it's optimal. You would probably get better results with, I believe, there are the emeralds, which increase critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. However, this is not the way I would like to play this build. I want to utilize Frenzy. I want to make Frenzy as strong as possible. And even though the flawed emerald seems to be giving you the most for the buck, the biggest bang for the buck, I believe it's the expression, it's like a double conditional. You have to have vulnerable, which we do have a lot of the time, but not always. And you also have the critical strike. If you want to optimize it, if you want to be as efficient, you should probably go with emeralds. I'm going with topazes for basic skill damage. As for the other pieces for jewelry, I'm using armor. So I'm using skulls. Uh, Even though I'm above 85%, I'm at 90%, and I believe the soft cup is at 85%. But from what I understand, the soft cup only it is showing you when you're fighting an enemy on your level. This screen right here. So I would have 5% above the soft cup when I would be fighting enemies which are on level 74. However, when you're running nightmare dungeons or most of the content in the game, the enemies will be higher level than you. So I think having a little bit more armor is beneficial. At least I noticed a difference, but it just might be placebo effect. Who knows, so that's up to you. And as for the remaining slots, for the armor slots, I know that many people are running maximum life, which would be very universal, which would be very good. Fortify, sapphires for Fortify, which would also be quite good. And there are a lot of options to build Fortify on Barbarian. I have not done that yet, which is a mistake, but I had simply had no need to. I don't really have a lot of problems with survivability. Oh my god, with surviving, it's not that hard most of the time. So, but if I would have a way of generating a fortify, that would be pretty good, because that's a percentage damage reduction. But I'm not an expert on fortify. I should add it to my build. I don't have it yet. But I'm using topazes because most of the time when I'm in danger of dying is when I'm crowd controlled. And as I said, I don't have a way of being immune to crowd control yet. So these jewels saved my life multiple times. So on weapons, as I said, critical damage, basic skill damage, vulnerable damage. You can also go for strength. You can also go for damage to close enemies, damage to bleeding enemies, damage to increase physical damage, increase and also what's it called, damage to slowed enemies. Because there are certain, even though we don't have a lot of ways to slow enemies, I think there are certain boots. I remember I found a boots once. Where are they? I think these are, yeah, which you can chill enemies. So this would be your source of slow. So this, in theory, should work with. Oh no, I replaced that sword. There's also an affix on a weapon, increased damage to slowed enemies. Yeah. On a side note, I don't think those boosts work as they should. I know, even though it should be a 7% true multiplier. I did not notice any difference in damage personally. So I don't know, it's not working with Frenzy and Double Swing as some sort of wrong interaction of the item is bugged, but or maybe it is working. I don't know, but I did not notice any difference. As for rings and amulets, you can have life rolls here. So if you're having trouble surviving, you can go for life, which is nice. But definitely critical strike strength, critical strike damage is the two which I would really like to have, because there are no other ways of getting it except gloves, at least for critical strike chains, and also vulnerable damage. So I would love to have those three on my rings, which, as you can see, I do not have. Here I don't have it. And the last option would be like, I don't know, probably life. But if you're struggling with damage, then like increased physical damage. Not sure if damage to close combat, close enemies is also possible to roll on rings. But yeah, as for amulet, I would go for something with defense personally. Do I have it here? I had a very nice amulet with a lot of damage reduction and critical strike against injured enemies, and also when you're fortified. So very defensive amulet. Was very nice. I found Battle Trance, which is really nice. It's straight. It looks like it was made from a Frenzy Bob because it increases your maximum number stacks of Frenzy and also buffs your other skills. So it will buff your double swing, and it improves your level of Frenzy, which is very nice. But again, I don't think it's working as intended. I see minimal difference in the attack speed when I'm using it, to be honest. I think there may be some sort of a soft cap on attack speed, which is not communicated clearly anywhere. At least I didn't find that information. So, but I'm going to talk about it a bit later. Hopefully, I will remember that. As for the other items, I'm trying to go for life when there is a possibility to get life and some damage reduction from distance and close enemies, or total damage reduction or total armor, stuff like that. I'm just, except for gloves. For gloves, I'm trying to get attack speed and critical strike damage. I've also started using a critical strike chains against injured enemies, which is really nice. You also have an aspect somewhere, legendary power, which does the same thing. So you're just melting stuff when it gets low on life. And yeah, and double sync here. So gloves are basically the only type of equipment where you have to be very specific with it. Well, you don't have to be, but it's beneficial because it will increase your damage a lot. Yeah, maybe, and lastly, as you can see, my boots most definitely not optimal, but I'm using them because they give me a lot of stats, which helps me with my Paragon board at the moment, because I'm still quite low level, so I don't have. Sorry, I'm not used to using a mouse and keyboard. So I don't have a lot of nodes opened yet, so I still am struggling with my breakpoints. For example, here you can see that in order for this to get the bonus, you need 370 willpower, 350. Here you need like dexterity, and yeah. So I was struggling with some nodes to get the bonuses, so that's why I'm using it. Here I'm like, as you can see, also need willpower. You can definitely replace that. You can get. I would wholeheartedly recommend something with movement speed. And if these boots are in fact working, they are probably pretty good boots, because this would buff your damage, increase the duration of your ground stomp, and give you movement speed. So definitely this is not optimal. However, uh, max charges is very nice. Having additional charges, you need to stay mobile when you're playing a barbarian and you're playing any sort of melee class, because due to the amount of ground effects. So I would advise you to get a lot of charges. Anything else which I would like to talk about? You can get attack speed on your helm. I don't think you can get it anywhere else. Yeah. But as for the battle trance, some of you may say, well, it's only working because you have battle trance. I will say this, it's working a bit better than it used to, but like 95% of my game I was playing without battle trance. I found it recently. I finished the game without battle trance. So yeah, keep that in mind. So one thing which I also should probably talk about is expertise, which I forgot about, and the weapon selection. So in terms of also legendary powers, I should also go through. So let's do an additional addendum to the equipment section. So let's go with the expertise first. Definitely you want to have two-handed weapon axe expertise. So if you're not usually wielding any two-handed axe, then this is probably the best one. It increases your vulnerable damage, critical strike chance against vulnerable enemies. So definitely this is great. And as for the weapon selection, you can use mace, swords, or axes in your in your hands while dual wielding. So I'm currently using swords because it's very easy to. They innately they are all swords have increased critical strike damage, if I'm not mistaken, and it's quite easy to roll additional critical strike damage on them. So, for example, on this sword, you can see that we have 26.2% of innate critical strike damage and also additional roll of 24%. So that's pretty nice. So you're getting like almost 50%, like 46.2%. What? No, my math is wrong. It's like 50.2%, right? Yeah, my math. 50.2%. Sorry about that. Mm, so that's pretty nice, and the critical strike damage is really strong. We're having like 320% and 191% of vulnerable damage at the moment. And the build is definitely not optimized. The equipment is not optimized. There is a lot of room for improvement. You can also use maces, but I don't think. I think they roll with. Do I have any one-handed mace? I think they roll with overpower damage, which I'm not really fan of. Yeah, if I don't think there's a reliable way. Maybe there is, but I did not explore it to reliably proc overpower. And besides, it doesn't seem that fun to me. So that's a negative for me. As for the expertise, would be nice to get some additional damage to stunned enemies, but for bosses you would miss a lot of portion of the fight without this bonus because they will be immune to stuns most of the time. And the lucky hit chance, also when you hit the stunned enemy. So there's a conditional element to the one-handed mace expertise, which I'm not a fan of. As for axes, they are pretty good. I'm actually wondering if I should not switch the axe because they're aligned with the theme of the build very well. They increase our critical strike chance against injured enemies, which is nice. And they also give you attack speed when you critical strike. And we do critical strike a lot, so that will be probably good. Probably good. As for the and they also, I think, they go with increased damage to healthy enemies. Yeah, so that would be really nice because then we could have increased damage to healthy enemies here. We could have bonus damage to injured enemies also from axes, and you can get damage to injured enemies with increased chance to critical strike against enemies from gear and from legendary aspect, like here. Increased critical strike chance against injured enemies, which is also surprisingly strong. So axes look really good. Swords, on the other hand, not so much. Swords are pretty meh, but I'm using them because it's easy to roll critical strike damage. But I'm pretty sure that axes are somewhat, I wouldn't say better, but they're definitely also quite good. So either axes or swords. And maybe I'll give you a quick look at the legendary aspects, which I should have talked about earlier, but I forgot about it. Definitely, which one of the most important aspects is sorry about that. I'm moving my mouse a lot. Is the disobedience? I don't know what's the if I can find the I don't think I can find the name of the aspect here, but it's the one which gives you increased armor when you're attacking. And we do attack a lot, quite fast. We can attack a lot of enemies with our double swing, so it's definitely not the most optimal way to build it, but you usually have a lot of stacks, so it increases your armor a lot and then increases your survivability a lot, which aligns really well with Frenzy because this also increases our survivability when you're attacking. So yeah. I having a damage against enemy grants you a barrier. Probably not an optimal choice. And as I will also say it once again, this is not an optimal selection. I just put whatever I could whenever I could. So you could definitely move those around to get some better aspects. But yeah, I have this here. It is nice. It's not the optimal one to have the barrier, but it is nice. Here I have one which increases my berserking duration, but it is a lucky hit chance. And I'm not a huge fan of a lucky hit, but I didn't have anything else to put in here, so I did put it in here. Here, very important, also basic skills grant damage reduction for a number of seconds. So this also aligns really well with Frenzy, which already gives us increased damage reduction. Becoming injured while crowd control grants you unstoppable. This is really nice. It saved my life a lot. When you're really low on life, this can, and somebody tries to crowd control you, you'll become immune, which will save your life sometimes. Here, increased critical strike chance against injured enemies. Really, really fun to use, and you can see the difference. You can really see the difference when this starts happening. Increased damage for each second you're standing still. In theory, it looks really well with Frenzy because you would just, imagine that we would be standing still and whacking things with our swords or axes or whatever really fast. But truth be told, it doesn't really happen that often because a lot of the time you have to approach enemies, you have to move from enemy to enemy, and a lot of enemies are running away from you. So very often I'm just doing this, trying to chase enemies. So it doesn't have a lot of time to actually start stacking and to activate. So in theory, it's good, but it's usually just during a fight with when I'm fighting bosses on elites. That's when it has time to activate. As for weapons, basic skill gain, increased attack speed. Definitely put it on a two-handed weapon. Are there better options? Probably yes. Is it the most optimal? Definitely not. For a lot of builds, but for this build, when you're trying to attack as fast as possible and using Frenzy, this is pretty nice. And yeah, put it here. For the other, however, I really think there's some sort of a soft cap on attack speed because I have a lot of attack speed, like here on gloves, on my skill tree. We have like a couple of nodes of attack speed. On our Paragon board, we have like attack speed, and I really don't. And our frenzy gives us attack speed, so but it doesn't seem like it's attacking as fast as it should. So not sure if it's bugged or if it's not working correctly, but I'm still going with it. Maybe it's working as intended and I'm not noticing it. Maybe it's a bug and they will fix it or whatever. But that's the theme of the build, and I'm reconnecting. Not sure why. And on the other weapon, critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 46%. And this is huge. When you get a crit with your double swing, your doubles, and you have the burst window open with ground stomp, you just melt stuff when this procs. Your double swing attacks so fast. Then it's really pleasant and enjoyable to do. On the other hand, again, I don't think it has any effect on your frenzy. At least I do not see a huge difference. There may be difference, but it's definitely not as noticeable as it is with double swing. Here I have the earthquake. No, not the earthquake. That's I put it here because I thought it would increase the damage of frenzy because very often it's easy to be at maximum fury, and it says that skills deal up to 40% increased damage based on your available primary resource. So the more resource you have, the higher the percentage should be. And according to the skill tree, frenzy is considered, at least it's described, where was it, as a basic skill. I don't see it here. I remember I've seen it yesterday somewhere, which is described as a basic skill. Or maybe it's with on weapons. Yeah, basic skills. So it's in at least here, frenzy is considered a skill. So I thought it should give me an increased damage multiplier, which is important. But I again see no difference really when I'm at full frenzy in my damage. So not sure if that is working. Uh, And then earthquake, the damage itself is not that important, but it leaves a pool. When you stand in the effect during the earthquake, we should be getting a percentage damage multiplier, which should work on our frenzy and double swing. So those are the legendary powers. I'm pretty sure there are others which I could use. Uh, yeah, but I'm not going. I've rambled as much as probably more than I should have. So uh, maybe I should go through the remaining legendary parts. I probably should. How do I get there? Oh, it's through here. So from offensive powers, my class only. Thorns, not so much, and Hammer of the Ancients, not so much for this build. Rapid Aspect, definitely. This you can use to spread bleed and to activate some buffs on your character which require bleeding. Whether it's increased damage reduction, increased damage, or whatever. So that could be also nice to have on one of your items. Increased damage for a second where you're standing still. Already talked about it. We're not really switching our weapons as often, so that's not. This one is not really that good for our build. Distant enemies, chance to be stunned, pretty low to be honest. So I did not test it. Attacking enemies with basic skills increase the damage of your next core skill. That could also probably good, especially if you combined it with the with Unbridled Rage passive or point. And I have to go here again. That wasn't the best idea, was it? Call of the Ancients. We have it on our action bar, but we do not use Leap, Upheaval, or Whirlwind, so it would not activate. Thorns via Berserking might be good. It could be probably nice to incorporate some sort of Thorns damage into the build, but I haven't tested it yet. Whirlwind, we're not using Whirlwind. We're not using Charge or Leap. This one I already talked about. And we're not using Kick or Charge. Which we probably could, you know. As for resources, we're not really Fury Staff, so we don't need this. We are not using Rend. This doesn't seem really that appealing. We're not Fury Staffed. We're not using Walking Arsenal that much. If you would use a lot of shouts, then probably this could be useful to you. This could be nice to extend the Berserking. Definitely Eluding Aspect to get the Unstoppable. Pretty nice. This, I don't know. I don't really feel like I need it. Kick or Groundstorm. We're not using Leap. Movement speed could be nice. And the last section, damage reduction for each bleeding enemy. I could probably see myself putting it on one of the items because it is possible to spread bleed with this build or with any barbarian bleed. So I will probably try to put it on an item in the future. This is useful, not optimal probably, but useful. Ooh, we get damage reduction. Did I read this skill completely wrong this entire time? It's possible. No, this you deal increased damage, but here you can also reduce the... Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That was also an option. But I'm not sure of how important it is, because when we are... Oh, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. It's Leap. I'm tired. Well, yeah, that's definitely not usable. Basic skills grant damage reduction is very nice. Disobedience is also very nice, probably mandatory. Yeah, so that is all. Sorry, I got confused there for a second. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. So, lastly, let's have a quick look at the Paragon board. This is definitely not optimized. I could probably go. I was just picking it as I was going. I was just trying to focus on things that made sense or were in line with the theme of the build. But there's probably a much better route. So I'm not going to go as to point by point where how to reach certain nodes. I'm just going to discuss why I've chosen to go with certain nodes, and that's all. So once you reach level 50, you start getting the Paragon points. and you can put them into those little nodes. And the gray ones give you some bonuses, blue ones give you a bit of bonuses, and maybe some unusual bonuses, which the gray ones don't give you. And the yellow ones are the best ones. And also you can have the gold ones, like the one in here, which give you some sort of additional effects. And the glyph sockets, where you can choose some of the glyphs. Maybe let's go with the glyphs, yeah. The most important is definitely exploit. It's I think it's no coincidence that the glyph is called an exploit, because it looks and plays like an exploit, because the vulnerable damage is so strong. Not only will it will give you additional vulnerable damage for each dexterity point you buy within range. So I bought like all of the dexterity nodes which I could, so it's giving me like 23% additional dexterity damage, almost 24. But it will make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds the first time you hit them, which usually gives you the time to kill them. And if it's champion, it also gives you a time to deal damage to them. Yeah, I also thought, remember now I should talk about weapons selection, but I'll maybe try to get back into it a little bit later. So yeah, that's definitely a very, very strong glove. Additional options are the Wrath, which will increase your critical strike damage with core skills, so your double swing will hit even harder, which is really nice. As for critical strikes generating more fury, you don't really need that much, but it will also be very beneficial if you want to spam some double swings more. So it's gonna be nice, yeah. So it's good. Also, revenge and ambidextrous are quite okay, because they will increase the effects of your magical nodes or your rare nodes. So, for example, here you can see that if I put the, the glyph socket, the revenge node here, which increases the effects of all of the rare nodes around it. So brash will give me more, and heavy blows. With this the node socketed here, the glyph socketed here, I'm getting 42% increased critical strike damage with 100 weapons and 14 strength, and without it, it's giving me 30%. It's a quite substantial increase. I was thinking about going with either revenge or ambidextrous here. We have a source of thorns damage, so we would be able to proc the secondary effect here. However, it wouldn't be very it wouldn't happen very often, so we probably wouldn't be able to stack it that high. So even though the bonuses will, in theory, will be a little bit smaller, once I increase the range and it can, include those other nodes, then the magical glyph will probably get better. So yeah, so the thorns damage wouldn't be very reliable. So I've decided to go with ambidextrous, because it will increase the damage with 100 weapons, and we are wielding 100 weapons with our frenzy and our double sync. However, I also do not think it's working correctly, because I see no difference in damage when I'm using this. Because I did test it. I've taken some points from other nodes and I put them in strength here, and I tried to see if there's a difference. I didn't see any difference. Not gonna lie, pretty annoying. So you can go with those those four. This one is also Blood Feeder. It's pretty interesting. It's mostly for bleed builds, but you can proc bleed with Barbarian, as I said, through thorns or through legendary aspects while you're berserking. So you can have an increased damage However, from what I can say see in the first section, it's not multiplicative, it's additive. So for every 5 dexterity, you would get like 2% increased damage. So usually there's like 5 to 7 dexterity nodes in certain places, I think. So let's take 6. So we get 12%, I think, flat damage increase to bleeding enemies, but you would also get 5% increased critical strike chance, which is very nice for us. So maybe if I will get another Paragon board, maybe I'll use it. I don't know. As for the other options, I don't know. Maybe this one, when you're wielding an axe to increase, it would give you a 12% multiplier to critical strike damage. Probably would be nice. Yeah, but those are my choices at the moment. And maybe I'll go through some of the magical and rare nodes. So I decided to get the double physical damage nodes here and here. Not sure how beneficial they are, to be honest. Did not test it, but in theory, we are dealing only physical damage, so it should be nice. So, and here we're getting some increased life. Here we're getting an increased life, and yeah, and physical damage also in rare nodes. Here I've went with double armor. Here I'm getting armor, and here I'm getting armor. It's very nice during leveling because those numbers mean a lot during leveling, but as higher when your equipment gets better, this the value of these nodes gets diminished a bit. It also get 8% maximum life. However, I believe it's flat life, not 8% of your life, including bonuses from items. So I think it's worth to keep that in mind. So pretty straightforward. Here I've chosen to go with the what's the board called? I should probably I cannot refund it. However, the keynote is here that is the flawless technique, which will increase our critical strike chance, which is pretty good with one-handed weapons. That's what we are trying to do. And also it's giving us some critical strike damage with one-handed weapons, and as I said, critical strike damage is very strong. It's also giving us damage reduction from close enemies. We are usually close to enemies, so it's also will give us some damage reduction. Also additional critical strike damage. And also damage with one-handed weapons and attack speed. This is probably not that strong, but I'm trying to stack as much attack speed as I can, so this was mandatory for me. As for the other nodes, here we will get 200 armor, which could probably be nice, but the potion bonus is not so great, and I would have to spend some points to get maybe at the late game if I have some spare points, which I doubt I will have. So I'll probably not get this node. And also here, cold resistances are pretty bad, unfortunately, in Diablo at the moment. So I'm not really getting any resistances on gear or anywhere else, so I'm not taking that. And lastly, I've gone with the Decimator, which is completely useless for this build, but that's not why I've went with this board. I'm not gonna go for the Decimator. I went with this board because it has a lot of vulnerable damage. Here we have one node, which gives us vulnerable damage, and 5 magic nodes, so like 35% vulnerable damage bonus in total. Here we have damage reduction from vulnerable enemies with vulnerable debuff on them, so that's pretty nice. So it's like 14% or something like that. Here I have another 35% of additional vulnerable damage with some armor. So this is giving me like 70% of vulnerable damage, which is really huge. Potion healing? No, I'm not gonna go there. Decimator, as I said, not gonna go there. Destroyer. Here we have vulnerable damage again, but it would require me to spend a lot of points to get there. And I would get like 20% vulnerable damage, which probably is worth it, but I'm not certain. And I'm pretty starved for points. Here is also another physical damage, which could be nice. But I'm pretty short on points, so I'm working on my glyphs now. So I will have to spend some additional points on dexterity or strength or willpower, depending on which glyph I decide to put here, to activate the bonuses, and then I will to increase the bonus, and the same I will have to do here. So that is the low-level barbarian, like at the very early stages of endgame, level 74. It's working pretty well. It's enjoyable to play. It's challenging to play. It's fun to play. But it's not meta. It's not definitely the strongest build in the game. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed watching Latrina chop some enemies. And
Impressive.
that wasn't impressive, Latrina. I should have chosen different emote. But maybe there is buy. There is buy.
Goodbye.
So thank you for watching. I hope you'll have a nice day. And yeah, I hope you'll have a nice day. Bye bye.